let me give a chota sa introduction of Shiri. Shiri scored 310 rank, and he had a very long journey. You already saw his videos. So, cutting the clutter, we will should shift to the substance of this meeting, which is strategy for psychology optional. So, to you, Shri, please start.
So, uh, hello everyone. I would like to share my psychology strategy, which was distilled in the last 6 attempts that I've given with this optional. I've made tremendous upgrades in the last year, which helped me boost my marks. So I would like to approach this video by segregating paper one and paper two, if it is okay, sir. So we'll start with paper one. Paper one, I feel is the foundation for this optional. And for me personally, what I've done is I've categorized the 14 chapters into 5 different topics. The first one being the first 3 chapters, 1, 2, 3, combined with the paper 2 ka first chapter. This generally deals with the statistics portion or the research methods portion or the introduction portion of the optional. And the second one being the cognitive psychology part, the chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 13 that I've approached as a one block. And third block was the 11th chapter personality combined with paper 2 ka chapter 2 and 3, which forms another block. The fourth block is the social psychology one, attitude, values, interests, combined with social integration chapter of paper 2. And the fifth block is the remaining chapters in paper 1. Those are developmental psychology, motivation and emotion, and the 14th one, issues in contemplative psychology. So what I've done when I'm preparing for paper 1 is that I've divided into these blocks because I found major overlaps between them, which made my preparation easier.
Okay.
So I highly recommend.
Okay, Shri. So your rationale for blocking the whole syllabus is the overlap between these topics which are spread across paper 1 and paper 2?
No, sir. The rationale is that generally there is a common theme that runs between these chapters.
Okay,
so
because
for instance, if you're reading chapter.
Because being any new aspirants who follow psychology as his or her optional, they might be confused if syllabus is like this in this particular sequence, why should I block? So they should know, I think.
So what happens is, for instance, if you're reading paper one may chapter second unit, which deals with research methods. If you observe properly, the syllabus for chapter 2 overlaps with the syllabus of chapter 3. The research method, there is no cut, there is no separation, as a strict separation between chapter 2 and 3. So what I did is, if you combine chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and paper 2 with chapter 1.
So it is something like these themes or topics which are in particular chapters, there are good connection, there's a good flow between these topics across the chapters which are spread in paper 1 and paper 2. Okay, so this is a very good information, or you can say kind of discovery learning for the new aspirants. Like, you can block your syllabus as per the flow of content which are present in different chapters of the psychology syllabus of UPSC.
Yes, sir. So I would like to repeat the block if possible.
Yeah, please. You can tell which chapter you can block in a single category.
To go from paper one may 1 to 3. In that, you will get the introduction of psychology, historical antecedents of psychology, and then the research methods will be starting from chapter 2, and then the statistics portion of psychology.
Okay.
These, if you are integrating with the paper 2 may chapter 1, which is the test portion, which also deals with statistics, reliability, and validity, I find that these 4 forms a logical flow where you can make your own notes and you can connect all the overlaps and all. And also, this will be easy when you're writing answers. For instance, if you're writing something about reliability and validity in paper 1, you can always link that thing with testing on psychology, education tests, or organizational tests that is there in the paper 2 of chapter 1. So this can form the block number 1. Block number 2 is the core of psychology, which I think is the cognitive psychology. For that, chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 13 generally deals with thinking and problem solving, learning, intelligence, and language and communication. These 6 chapters will form block 2,
Okay,
which I think is very important.
just to add on, I also use the same kind of blocking in my Parisharam test series. I also spread this whole syllabus in more or less this manner. There's a quite overlap. Like you just told me, this cognitive wala aspect. It is like a 1 week test, and all these chapters are in that week only. You can say that week is this cognition block.
So this I feel is very important. The block, it is highly, if 2023 aspirants, if someone is looking at this video, I highly advise them to concentrate on block 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 13, because these the points that you learn, the theories that you learn in this, or the examples or the research studies that you learn in these blocks will be useful for every paper and every answer. So if you are
Okay.
liberally quoting psychologists or theory, you can use them in paper 2. So I think this is a major portion that a new aspirant should focus on. The third portion deals with personality. The chapter 11 in paper 1, which will be overlapping with paper 2, may chapter 2 and 3. So what happens is that chapter 11 deals with the theory aspect of personality, and then chapter 2 of paper 2 deals with the abnormalities in mental disorders, and chapter 3 deals with the therapeutic approaches, how to deal it. So it forms a very reasonable conclusion. Even when you're making notes, if you're, for instance, if you're reading about Freud's theory, psychoanalysis, it is always better to have the theory at one place, and then what are the disorders that it can treat, and what are the therapeutic approaches that approach it
Yeah,
from this theory.
and these are 3 different chapters in the syllabus. One is in
Three
paper 1,
different
and 2 are in paper 2. So it should be well connected by your this blocking, and similarly making notes in that fashion.
So, if, for instance, if you are writing some therapeutic approach from Mark Twain or Cicerelli, it is always better when you're writing this answer, you can quote from the paper 1 ka chapter 11, which will make it more theory based and more interlinkages will appear in the answer. So, chapter 11 of paper 1 and paper 2 may 2 and 3 will form the logical flow.
Yeah, I like
And
to
the
add.
fourth is,
I like to add only one thing. Like number of students ask me, sir, we are not able to write the kind of technical answers in paper 2. So this is the solution for that. You should relate your paper 1 knowledge to in paper 2, so that you can differentiate your GS answer with psychology answer, because there's a huge tendency in paper 2 we may detrack ourselves in writing a very generic stuff, which is more or less equals to GS, because the questions were so generic and so GS oriented, and especially in paper 2. So we have this kind of tendency to write non-technical type answer. So this is the solution. So you should please pen down. This is a very good suggestion by Shri. Thank you, Shri. Please move on.
not a problem, sir. Then the fourth block deals with social psychology. This is particularly important because there are interlinkages with GS4 also. GS4 also, because the social psychology attitude, values, and interest chapter will also have linkage with essay also. So the fourth block is important not only for psychology, but also for your ethics and essay papers in GS also. So in this block, the chapter 12 of paper 1 forms the foundation, and the application part comes in chapters 9 and 14 of paper 2, social integration and gender psychology of paper 2. So I found them as a relatively flow wala thing, attitudes hota hai, values hota hai, and then how to deal with prejudices, discrimination. So if you are going in a flow, I think it will be very easy to answer ethics, GS4, and also psychology. So this forms the paper. This forms the block 4 of paper 1. And the fifth block is a mix of chapters that are left behind. So the fourth is developmental psychology. Fourth chapter, ninth chapter, motivation and emotion, which I could not fit anywhere in here. And the 14th one is a repository of all the topics that UPSC thought should be clubbed in the last chapter. So 4, 9, and 14 you can read whenever you're bored of these blocks and all. So that forms the fifth block in paper 1.
Okay, so we are done with the blocking of the chapters of paper 1. So my next query is that, Shri, we have this different 4 to 5 blocks. So now the sequencing of these blocks, like I'm considering myself a very new to psychology. So from where to start? Which block to be started first, and which to be taken later?
I'm assuming that, for example, if someone is trying to sequence the blocking thing, I assume that particular aspirant, he or she has already completed NCRT, because I don't want to I don't want someone to start cognitive psychology right away without knowing what exactly is psychology or what is it, what
Yeah.
it is and all.
Yeah.
So I assume that NCERT पढ़ लिया आपने, and then you can start with cognitive psychology, block number 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 13, because that forms the core of the psychology. I have already assumed that you are already familiar with the basic terms of psychology. So the block 2 will form the logical first option, which is cognitive psychology. And then block 3, the personality wala aspect.
Okay.
And the block 5, 4, 9, and 14, developmental psychology, motivation, emotion, and 14. And you can read chapter 1, 2, 3, which is generally left out by aspirants, and UPSC is not giving option to leave them in choices because they're including each question in each subsection.
Now they script in such a beautiful manner. It has become so important a block that like in 2020 aspirants were like gone mad that it was not a paper of psychology, it was a paper of psychometrics.
Second statistics also.
Yes.
And they also gave applied questions. They asked us to construct a happiness scale from a layperson's perspective, which was about the real concept.
They want to apply you the Likert attitude scale in this in some of the questions, if I am not wrong.
Yes. So that will go from the fourth block. And the reason why I included social psychology as the fifth sequence में fifth, क्योंकि it has linkages with paper 2. It will ease your transition into paper 2. So you can create the social psychology wala block into the last one, because then you can easily transition away into the paper 2 wala. So this will be the sequence, the second block, third block, fifth, first, and fourth block can be the order 2, 3, 5, and 4. Assuming that you're already good with the terminology and you've completed at least NCERT and a basic textbook one, then you can go with this order.
Regarding terminology, I would like to suggest aspirants, like our NCERTs are very good repository of basics and terminology also. You should go back to the last pages of psychology NCERTs. You will find each and every term explained in 2 to 3 lines, and that is very simple language. So please read that. It will give you a very fine idea.
So paper 2, in paper 2, I do not find any block. I treated the remaining chapters because if you have noticed, we have already completed first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, 9th and 14th chapter in paper 1 itself. So there are now 9 remaining chapters. What I've done for paper 2 is that I found Mark Twain's textbook, even though it is the only source that we have for paper 2. I found it a bit outdated. The sources and the examples are, I thought, are not relevant in 2022. So what I did was I approached every chapter as its own, and I tried to search for any new textbooks or sources because I had ample amount of time, and I also been with this option for more than 6 years. So what I done was I picked one standard textbook for each chapter. So for instance, if it is a work psychology thing, I had Steve Robbins' Organizational Psychology as my basic material. I don't advise anyone to read it completely because that would be suicide.
Whosoever will be listening this conversation, he might get a heartbreak type thing because he will be reading day and night the Smarak Swain for paper 2, and you are saying it is outdated. So I request you friends to take this advice a pinch of salt, especially for the 2022 aspirants.
So I don't think that they should listen to this video because changing any preparation strategy in this late of the course, I don't think is advisable.
Yeah, this is very special advice you are giving now. In the last days, you should stick to your plan. You should stick to your strategies. Don't change it, please.
You should only stick if at all, if some 2022 aspirant abhi jo mains likh raha hai, someone feels that their notes is lighter on their paper 2 wala thing, they can always refer to my notes because whatever I've read and all, I've made notes there.
Beautiful notes. I request each and everyone who will be writing this year, please refer them. Please value add. That is the best value addition available on Smarak Swain. Just read Smarak Swain and value add it. It will definitely give you better marks. So please do that.
So the remaining chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. What I did was generally I had a lot of time because COVID का भी postpone हो गया था, तो मैंने सोचा आपका परिश्रम लिख रहे थे, तो मैंने सोचा चलो एक chapter I used to write. So I was like searching for basic textbooks on those specific chapters. so work psychology के लिए, educational psychology के लिए. So I come across certain books. I will give you, actually what I'm thinking is I will upload everything in a folder and I will share the links also of all the textbooks, the basic textbooks that I've referred to. But I highly advise anyone to not read them cover to cover, because every chapter you'll be having one textbook of 600 pages.
Yes.
Instead, what you have to do is index में देखो what is it, for example, there is a theory, Herzberg's theory. Herzberg two-factor theory is there. So I won't say you should read the entire chapter on motivation. I think Robbins has two separate chapters on motivation itself. In optional, so उतना नहीं चाहिए. All you need is only 200 words on that particular theory and 2-3 studies to back it up.
Like for example, I would like to add on this. For motivation only, you go to the Lumen's Learning website and you will get a good compendium of all the motivational theories. And if you're smart enough, you will realize later कि यार इससे काम हो जाएगा. At times it happens.
What I found beautiful in these textbooks is that because introduction textbooks like Baroness Cicerelli they have the job of fitting every psychological concept, every major psychological concept into 600 pages.
Yes.
So they are unable to go into depth or the illustration of the theory. So what you will find better with these textbooks is that they have the space and time. So what they do is they go into depth, and the beautiful thing is they illustrate the theories very well. So if it is a Herzberg theory,
they are not the textbooks actually. Yeah, they're not the textbooks actually. Yeah.
So what I used to do is I used to shamelessly copy the illustration. So they used to illustrate every theory into some diagram. So Adam's equity theory here. So there used to be a diagram. So what I do is I just took a screenshot of it and I used to leave the book, because the basics are already in Smarakve.
Yes.
I'm not asking everyone to read the entire theory from that book, but copy the illustration, because they are very beautiful and they'll help you to make your point in the answer sheet very easily, because वो illustration हो जाता है, so the examiner will understand that हाँ ये बंदा को पता है, और this girl or this boy will have answered.
Then one more message for 2022 aspirants from my side. Like Shri is saying, to add illustrations in your answers, you should refer these books to get the diagrams also. You can also do the Google image search and also the news. Because for example, you write motivation theory and you go with the image section of, you will definitely find it will bit you can say time intensive, but it's worth doing it even now also, I could say. And you can also go for the news tab, because at night you must find you may find that some news is going on and which is related to that, especially in the West. So it's a very good strategy to upgrade your notes with minimum efforts.
Especially for social integration, you shared on your channel one report by Pew Research Center.
Yeah, it was
which came up with the social integration, how Indians see themselves. They appreciate the unique individual identity of Indian, like being an Indian, but they live separately in their own blocks, be it the neighborhood or marriage or something. So those statistics on that Pew Research study that you shared has helped me upgrade my social integration notes, because I was able to write those statistics directly.
In concept of social integration, it was like initially India was considered as a melting pot. Then they start saying it's a toast salad, and now they say no, it's a thali of multiple cuisines. So this is the upgradation you need to just make.
Are all very important in paper two. So I'll refer the textbook even for 2023 aspirants. Take all these book lists with a pinch of salt, because I think I've forwarded them to you also.
Yeah.
my entire paper.
I got scared once. If he is able to read each and every line of these books, so we should reverse our roles.
No, sir. And actually, I would also point out to 2023 aspirants that I'm not the psychologist proper this year. The thing is, I scored only 266. Even after reading these many books, I think two people who scored higher than me, they have kept the things relatively simple. They don't have an elaborate strategy like this.
Let me explain the reason why he's not topper, because he's very lethargic in answer writing, and I keep on motivating him, ki Shri, please write. Then only he's able to write for 12 to 13 days out of the whole Parishram schedule. So this is the mistake he did, honestly, and people, you should also learn from this.
So I believe that content is not, you just read, if you are reading 25 books or 30 books, that will not guarantee you marks in optional. It's always about how to present yourself. Keep it simple, relatively simple. Use psychologist words and theories and fears also if possible. Write research studies such as say, and keep it really simple. Don't, as I think before my mains, I think you told me, don't be a research scholar, be an aspirant when you're tackling this psychology. So that is really true, because it doesn't matter you have read 20 textbooks or 30 textbooks.
Yes.
How simple you presented it, how novel, like the novelty in your illustration of theory, they will make a huge difference, not the number of books that you have read. So even if I'm sharing my entire book list, just go through the images section. Index में images section भी होता है. So if there is a image on Freud का theory, try to copy that. If there is a theory there is the illustration, I've copied it in my notes. So what he does is that in simple flowchart, he explains, I think Richard Gross has explained the entire theory in one illustration, which is really important, because you can fit the entire writing of ID, ego, superego, defense mechanism, anxiety into one simple flowchart, which will give the examiner that, okay, this fellow knows what he is doing, what he or she is writing.
It simply gives the bird's eye view, and the moment the evaluator saw that copy, he come to, he knows everything, just switch to next question. He will give you, award you good marks, and you are saving his efforts, and definitely it will give you half marks extra. It happens.
Yes, sir. So whatever book list I'm sharing, please don't scare it of them. You don't need to read it cover to cover. Keep your standard book the same. Cicerelli. I highly recommend Richard Gross as your standard textbook. It is heavy, it is bulky, but the good thing I found about the textbook is that it is very concise. So for instance, if he's explaining a theory on Pavlov's classical conditions, so what he does is he does in a simple point-based format, which is very relevant for this optional. There's no paragraph in it. So Richard Gross textbook also, it will be in the folder. I highly recommend it as a standard textbook because it covers all the chapters. It is like a Cicerelli, but a better one. Cicerelli or Barrel, but it's a better one. It has all the research studies from 2021, 2022. I highly recommend that as a standard textbook. You can base it there because the way they presented it.
Okay. You just named Richard Gross. Nowadays, I also suggest the aspirants to read Asser and Smith also, because it is also an updated book. So for 2022 aspirants, I think please don't go for Richard Gross right now, because this is not the time again, and it's again bomb on your head by Shri. Go for leave Smarak Soyen and go for Richard Gross. Please don't do it.
No, Richard Gross now paper one is. I'm not talking paper two. I'm saying instead of Baron Cicerelli, rather than Cicerelli, Passer and Smith, or Richard Gross is what I'm saying for paper one.
Okay.
Whatever book and another disclaimer I have to give is that whatever book I'm suggesting, don't read them from page 1 to page 500 or 600.
Yeah, it is.
You have to go to the index. You have to see the concept. What is the concept that it is missing in your notes, and just have to focus on that specific topic.
Yes.
So that would be very useful.
Okay.
So in paper 2, I will share the thing, and now I'll go chapter wise and chapter wise, so people will understand what are the differences. Yeah. So the first thing is that the basics. You have to read the NCERT. Then I cannot understate or undervalue the importance of NCERT, because psychology is a huge subject. Reading NCERTs will restrict you. Okay, this is the depth that is wanted. These are the topics that I have to tackle, and also it gives an Indian version of the event.
Yes, very.
Whatever textbook we're reading, whatever textbook Baron, Cicerelli, Passer, Smith, Richard Gross, jo bhi hai, it is written in a Western perspective. So NCERT gives you that valuable Indian perspective. So for every question, when you're writing in paper 1 or paper 2, it is always better to include that Indian perspective. Yes. So if you're writing about social integration, it is always important, even in the introduction or conclusion, to mention that India is a diverse country of different religions, races, castes, and whatever.
Like they always include tribes whenever they mention the social integration, and the West doesn't do that, and those Western textbooks lack that aspect, and that is very essential. Whenever you mention Indian context in any of the answers of psychology, it's a +1.
So, and also a perception studies hota hai, cultural studies on perception.
Yes.
The Western textbooks cover that, but they give examples of African tribes and some Inuit tribes of Scandinavian region. NCERT gives Indian tribes with Indian research.
Sinha and Mishra is there for.
Studies, so those are very important. So I'm assuming that if you're starting the video, I've already assumed that you have read NCERT, both both for paper 1 and paper 2,
yes.
according to the syllabus. It's that it is there in NCERT doesn't mean it is in CH syllabus. I think some chapters are not mentioned in the CH syllabus. So you don't need to go cover to cover. It's always better to have a chapter-wise thing. So if you're reading memory today, open NCERT, just read memory ka chapter. You don't need to go from top to bottom of entire thing. Especially, I think 12th class because I think not every chapter is mentioned in the syllabus. So you can go chapter-wise only. So NCERT and any textbook, it is barren ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं, Cicerelli है, कोई बात नहीं, Parsons Smith, Richard Ross, जो भी है. I'm assuming that you have read that.
Yeah, my personal favorite is Cicerelli because it is little lucid and easy to understand.
Very easy that. I always, even though I referred countless number of books for every chapter, I always came back to Cicerelli when the concept becomes very complex.
Yeah, because
I used to come back.
The easiest book to comprehend in psychology, I personally find Cicerelli is the one.
And maybe if someone is starting the optional, they can start with Cicerelli, they can complete it. Now, even now also, what I recommend is that Cicerelli don't go from cover to cover, because in the introduction chapter, they give a lot of American view of psychologists and feminism in psychology, which are good topics, but they are not mentioned in the syllabus. So you can always go with the syllabus. You have to print out the syllabus, go with the keywords. Okay, historical antecedents of psychology. You have to see where it is mentioned and read the specific chapter. But don't go. You don't need to go for I think maybe कुछ chapters होता है which are not needed, and the basic biology text chapter is also not needed. You can go from chapter to chapter only. So in paper 2. I'm excluding the chapters that have linkages in paper 1, or should I go sequentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7?
Yeah, you just tell whatever chapters are left, because most of them are covered with paper 1. So like these applied parts, especially this psychology, gender psychology, because they are very applied parts, and students at times find that where to get their content, how to write, because these are simply applications. So you can just reap in all the concepts whatever you read in the previous chapters of paper 1, paper 2, and then you can write answer. But it's an uphill task.
So should I go with paper 2 ka chapter 1 se?
Yeah, please.
I'll go.
Please. They really
so
want.
In chapter 1, what I found importance is that paper 1 in chapter paper 2 ka chapter 1, which I think is about test psychometrics. So actually what happens is that you have to complete chapter 1, 2, 3 of paper 1 before going into this chapter.
Okay.
That is the basic thing that you have to do. And the book that I found very important for this chapter is A.K. Singh's Research Methods.
Okay.
In that there is I think the first chapter, second chapter, they deals with test construction. And I think the UPSC has copied the syllabus of that chapter, or what, I don't know who copied whom, but it is an exact verbatim thing. I found very important because A.K. Singh is an Indian professor. So whatever tests or whatever limitations or what are the advantages or whatever concepts he dealt with in an Indian context, which I found very helpful.
Okay.
So the basic textbook that can be applied for this chapter is A.K. Singh. Not the entire A.K. Singh. Please don't read the 700-page textbook. I'm saying that there is a specific chapter for test construction. You can see the index and there'll be that. So that was my primary source that I made notes. And there are some topics which were not mentioned in A.K. Singh. For that, I used a Western textbook called Kaplan. I think I've shared it with you. These two formed my notes for paper 1. I highly recommend not referring to Smarksvin for this chapter. I think he has given it as an appendix in the last chapter.
Last chapters.
Which I didn't find the points or the number of points that are required. I didn't find it useful. So you can base A.K. Singh as your primary source material for chapter 1. I'm assuming that you already read 1, 2, 3 of paper 1 before coming into this chapter.
Yes.
Make your own notes. You can see my notes, or you can make your own notes for for chapter 1. And in chapter 2, I am assuming that before you are going into the chapter 2, I'm assuming that you completed the chapter 11 of paper 1, because that forms the theory aspect of theory aspect of personality. In this, I found एक Berger का एक book है. The reason why I found is that I found Smarksvin very insufficient, because he did not deal with every concept. He explained the concepts, but I had trouble when I was writing your answers, because I had to write in point format, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For example, there was this question in your test series: what are the symptoms of ADHD?
Yes.
And what are the treatment required? So in this Burger ka textbook, which Burger and Barlow, I think Barlow, I'll upload those textbooks. What you have to do is for every chapter at the end, they have given an illustration. So for example, if you are dealing with addiction, alcoholic addiction as a chapter, so what I've done is don't read the chapter, but at the end of the chapter, they have given a flowchart of it. So I have shamelessly copied the entire flowchart because it has everything. It has given the causes. They have also listed the causes as a different, like biological causes kya hota hai, psychological causes kya hota hai. In that psychological, psychoanalytical, behavioral, and cognitive. The thing is, the entire disorder, for instance, the personality disorder, he has given causes, symptoms, treatment in one flowchart. What I've done is I've just copied the flowchart and I've kept it with me in my notes because one, they helped me write in point format, and two, there was a diversity. So schizophrenia hai. So in the schizophrenia, in my notes, what I did was I had defined it, and then he categorized symptoms as positive and negative symptoms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are the causes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and treatment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in that textbook, don't read the entire thing. Just go to the specific chapter. If it is a personality disorder, go to that chapter. Scroll to the end of the chapter. You will find a flowchart of that entire disorder. I found it really helpful because I completed the entire chapter very easily, and also it gave me a point format to write it.
Yeah, it saved a lot of efforts. I think 2022 aspirants should follow this advice seriously, because that chapter is around 25 to 30 marks in the paper 2 syllabus in every year, and you can cover it in within hours if you follow this approach.
Only flowchart पढ़ना है आपको, मतलब आपको description में पढ़ना है because I think it is written for medical professionals, that textbook. But at the end में जो flowchart है, that is really important. In Mark Twain, he has explained the disorder in a very simple and easy way, but they won't give you points. So if you're writing schizophrenia just a paragraph, I think you will be awarded less marks when compared to your writing in point format. Causes क्या होता है and all. So in Barlow ka textbook mein, I highly recommend everyone to copy those flowcharts. So that I'm uploading in the folder. That is the only thing that I've done for second chapter. Yes. And in third chapter, and before moving on, second chapter mein, there is this specific topic on stress. Stress hai, problem focused coping hai, and emotion focused coping hai. So that I've referred in what is that? Katzin, social psychology by Katzin. That also I've uploaded. In that, I think there is a chapter 14 chapter, stress and type A, B, C, and personality. Even in that book, that specific chapter, you can copy the points that they have given.
Yes.
They give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stress. What are the focused copings and all? So I found that very helpful.
Like for me, I find that this chapter good in all the three books. Basic NCERT, it is very good. This stress coping with the life stresses. This is good because it gives very simple diagrams in its boxes. Good. Cicerelli also explained it well.
Cicerelli is good.
And Passer Smith also fine. I also read Passer Smith. It is also very good for this chapter, because this chapter is very, you can say, related to our lives. Whenever we read that, we start finding solution. यार इसमें तो उस situation में ये coping करनी चाहिए थी. So it is something like this. So you can read it from these basic books. You will find it beautiful.
In Kathin, for instance, what I found is that there are studies. I think there is a 2000 study on how people waiting in a commute, when they're commuting from home to work, they have these enhanced stress level hormones in their body when they're researched. So what I did was I copied that research study. I linked it with our urban density hai hamara, like slums. For example, Delhi hai, you have to travel all the way from Dwarka to Noida to travel this. So what I did was in 2009, this was the study. This is really applicable for India because of the traffic that happens in Bangalore or Delhi, which gives you that edge, next level edge. So the studies that I found in Kathin were really relevant because I found them pretty useful in Indian context. So that is the reason why I refer to Kathin. Once again, I can emphasize this enough. Don't read the textbook entirely. You will not complete it in 1 month also. So just the specific portion on stress, just see the stress wala studies or something, try to link it with Indian context.